Hey, everybody, welcome back to Get in the Game podcast. And I'm your host, Scott Linebrink, and we're back for another episode where we talk about faith and action, getting off the sidelines, and getting in the game of our faith. And today, I'm very excited to welcome Dr. Tim Elmore. He's an internationally recognized author and a leadership expert, founder of a group called Growing Leaders. And Tim has spent decades writing books and doing research and equipping the next generation with the tools that they need to lead well and serve others, which is what we're all about, Tim, serving others. So
Yep.
I'm really excited to talk to you about this aspect of service and how it combines with leadership, about the wonderful stories that you tell. I've heard you speak many times, and I know you've worked with sports groups and Fortune 500 companies as well as other nonprofits, along with your own nonprofit, Growing Leaders. But it is just a pleasure to have you. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Scott. I have enjoyed a few times we've gotten to connect, and I think we're two peas in a pod. This should be a fun conversation.
We do. I think we both have the gift of gab.
Yeah,
We love baseball, which,
that's right. This is
and we
true.
love a good story.
That's right. Absolutely.
So,
Good.
Tim, you're in Atlanta, right? So, does
Yeah.
that mean you're a Braves fan?
Yeah, I do follow the Braves, but I have lived mostly in National League cities all over the country, Cincinnati, San Diego, Denver, Colorado. So I've accumulated baseball teams along the way that I follow. So I'm all
Nice.
over the place. I'm hoping that they all win, and that's impossible when they play each other. But that's another podcast for another time.
Well, we are coming up. Actually, we're in the midst of playoff season right now.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
this is my favorite time of
Oh
baseball,
my
and
gosh. Yeah.
we're just weeks away from the World Series. So, I just can't wait to see the heroes that rise to the top, and the great plays that get made, and the memorable, the instant classics. I just love
Yep.
that time.
It's so true. I do too. I do too. Fun.
Well, Tim, let's get started here.
Yeah.
Why don't you just start? I'd love for folks just to learn a little bit more about you. I've heard you speak, and I heard you talk about your experience surviving a plane crash.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
you've got a wonderful faith testimony too. I'm gonna let you choose how to tell others who Tim Elmore is.
Okay. Well, I'll try to give you the Reader's Digest version here, not the elaborated encyclopedia version. Um, I started my career, believe it or not, around 1980. I started in the classroom as an educator, became a pastor. In fact, when I was a pastor, I served with John Maxwell, this
Oh
leadership
wow,
guru who
yeah.
now has sold a gazillion books, New York Times bestselling author. But my love of the next generation developed as I taught in the classroom. My love of leadership obviously surfaced with my work with John. And it was during the 1990s that my love for leadership and my love for young people kind of came together. And I thought the wisest place to invest my time was in the next generation.
Mm.
I kind of live by the principle always invest in the inevitable, and they are the inevitable next gen, coming up. So a lot of my focus is I want to teach them not just to graduate school and don't do drugs, but to surface in the workplace as leaders,
Mm.
servant leaders, empowering others, not about power, but about empowering. So that's where I think you and I dovetail. We both believe that the world needs a whole bunch more people that are committed to serve. So what I often tell college students is, as leaders, we lead by serving and we serve by leading.
Mm.
So if we have a place of influence, we shouldn't shun it or run from it. We need to make sure that we stay humble, obviously, and we're under the greatest leader in the world, in Jesus. But that's a way of serving is by influencing and leading a team of people to collaborate, align, and get to some place that nobody would have gotten to had they done it alone. So that's what I'm doing.
Tim, I'm so glad that you said that. It reminded me just last night, I went to a big event here in Austin, Texas, and I heard a very well known football player speak. And he's done some great things in leading some kingdom building initiatives, but he was almost apologetic for his football career and talking
Yeah.
about that as a time in his life where even he felt like he might have been pursuing a worldly pursuit.
Uh,
And now he's doing something so much more meaningful. And it just really bothered me as I sat there because I thought, no, 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 no. That you don't have to be apologetic for those experiences. that was all part of God's plan in
Yes,
giving you the
yes.
platform and building your passion, right?
Yep, it's so true. And I feel like others have modeled for me the route that I've taken. You and I are both in ministry,
Mm.
but we're public facing. So, you know what came to my mind as you were talking? Way back a couple of centuries ago, William Wilberforce was a major, major force that God used in England to abolish slavery. But if you remember early in his political career, he was going to join the parliament and be a member of parliament, but he really was thinking he wanted to go into ministry. And he talks to William Pitt over coffee one day. And he says, I just can't decide whether I go into parliament or I go into ministry. And William Pitt said, why don't you do both?
Mm.
And he meant go into parliament, but you be
Yeah.
a minister of the gospel
Yeah.
every moment you're there. You shine your light, use language they understand. You know, you can't say praise God, hallelujah. But I'm telling you, that's where athletes need to be. That's where you and I need to be post our athletic life. We are unashamedly who we are. I was just with the SEC last week. I was Pastor Elmore, but I used language they understood, you know,
Yeah.
and I got to serve. So I don't know. I'm kind of getting off track here, but I love the fact that we don't have to do either or. It can be both and we don't need to apologize for the platform
Yeah.
that God has given us.
Well, we knew we were going to get off track, and here, we did it immediately.
It's
So,
true.
but I want to throw in a book recommendation
Okay.
because I love doing that as I hear people talk about things that I've read in books. David Platt has a wonderful
Yeah.
book called Gospel Threads,
Yeah.
and he talks about ways to take the gospel and to frame it in such a way that for the non-believer, they would never know that you're quoting a
Yeah.
biblical principle, but you
Yeah.
just incorporate it into your natural speech. And when we're filled with the word, it comes out.
Yeah, absolutely. And it should come out naturally. There's no forcing it. It's not a weird thing where it becomes awkward. It's just who we are. And I love it when I meet athletes and former athletes where it's just a natural part of their fiber. And Scott, I feel like that's who you are. And I love what you're about because of that.
Well, thank you. I will accept that compliment with humility. I really appreciate that because I'm a big fan of yours too. Let's go back to the task at hand here, talking about servant leadership. Can you maybe share a story for us? Because I love your stories of
Yeah.
someone who embodied the principle of a leader who acted as a servant.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Scott, you and I talked about the images we like to use to teach skills and principles, life principles, biblical principles. So they're called habitudes. It's kind of a cheesy word, but habitudes are images that form leadership habits and attitudes. And one of them you and I were just talking about, I'd love to share. It's called the
Please.
Waldorf Principle. The Waldorf Principle. True story, took place decades and decades ago. Uh, a young man named George Bolt was behind the front desk of a small motel in Pennsylvania. And on a very, very rainy night, an elderly couple kind of stumbled in, shook off the rain off their coats and umbrellas, walked to the front desk and asked George if they could have a room. Well, George says, oh, I wish I could give you a room, but he said, there's a convention here in town. All the rooms are full. I'm so sorry. We don't have any rooms. The couple smiled and said, no worries, we'll find something. And they started to walk out the door. But it was at that moment that George Bolt thought to himself, they're not going to find a room. I mean, every
Mm,
hotel in this little town
yeah.
is full. So he stopped them before they got out the door and said, wait, 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 wait. He said, wait, you need to stay here. And they said, I thought you said you had no rooms. He said, well, we don't have any hotel rooms. But he said, my room is the guest room right off the wing of this building. And there's clean sheets and fresh towels. You need to stay in my room. And they go, we're not going to take your room from you. That's ridiculous. That's a personal room. And he goes, no, no, no. I'm fine. I'm fine. You get in there. And because George was younger and more energetic, he won the argument. So he pushes them into his room and they spend the night there. Meanwhile, George stays up all night behind the front desk. When they come out the next morning, this elderly man said, young man, I have never been served so extravagantly and
Mm,
sacrificially as you just served me last night. Would
wow.
you tell me your name? And George said, well, sure, George Bolt is my name. He goes, well, I'm going to write that down because one day I may build the biggest, finest hotel in the world. And if I do, I'm going to find you to run it. And with that, Mr. Waldorf Astor walked out
Wow.
of the hotel, who later built the Waldorf Astoria Hotel in New York City.
Wow.
And he sent a one-way ticket to George to fly up from, or take a train up, I guess, from Pennsylvania. And he said, here's your hotel. But what I love about this story was George didn't have some great strategy to manage teams. He wasn't the smartest guy in the room, probably, but he served well beyond the job description. It was extravagantly, which means over the top, and sacrificially, which meant it cost him something. And I think that's what Christ calls us to.
Yeah.
When someone asks for your shirt, give them your coat too. When
Yeah.
someone strikes your cheek, turn the other cheek. Isn't that true? It was
Absolutely.
not just do the job description. People expect that. You blow them away when you serve them extravagantly and sacrificially. So anyway, that's a story that locks into my mind and reminds me how to live every day of my life.
Yeah, I love that story. I love how you tied in the biblical principles of that, and that's exactly what the faith walk is all about.
Yeah.
Is not what do I have to do, but what can I do?
Yes, yes, absolutely. And that's the switch. I
Yeah.
don't have to, I get to.
Mm,
I think sometimes we'll have attitude days where we need to shift that gear.
sure. Well, you were talking about your work with the generations to come,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
I know you've done this for a long time, so I'm guessing you got to see multiple generations through
yeah,
this. You've written a new book. It's called "The Future Begins with Z."
yeah,
So, and it's all about serving or teaching Gen Z. So, as I sit here with two children in Gen
yep,
Z,
yep.
I'm curious to hear this answer because what have you learned about the emerging leaders and how they view service in this generation, and how should we coach and mentor them?
Yeah, well, great question. Let me start by clarifying for listeners who Gen Z is. So, Generation Z would be the youngest population entering the workforce. But as you said, Scott, they're also in college and high school and maybe even late middle school right now, anyway. So, they're young adults. They're the ones just younger than the millennials, but just ahead of the alpha generation, which is the youngest children that we're measuring now. But they're coming in different. In fact, they often come into a job interview a little hot. They feel pretty cocky about that smartphone stuff they just picked up, or the YouTube videos they watched. And again, I don't mean to stereotype, but they come in high agency, high anxiety.
Mm.
So a high sense of agency. Everybody listening understands free agency, right? That
Hmm.
means they're coming in feeling very, very good about what they can do, sometimes too good, for,
Yeah.
for, for a hiring manager. But also they have high levels of anxiety. In fact, that same smartphone I just referred to often just overwhelms them with information. So I know you have kids and you probably even see at least a hint of this.
I want to
So
smash
how
them
we,
every day.
yeah, that's another podcast for another day,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I feel like the best way we can serve them is to first understand who they are. They are humans just like we are, so in that sense, we're a lot alike. But I think we got to play chess, not checkers. Remember that habitude?
Hmm.
So when we play checkers, all our pieces move alike, they all look alike, we treat them all alike. When I play chess, I know what the bishop does, the pawn, the rook, the king, the knight. Everybody's different. So I got to know what they are and who they are. So they do come in differently than other generations, even different than the millennials, by the way. And some millennials are probably listening right now. So I think we need to recognize that they come in very entrepreneurial. Scott, this will be interesting to you, I think. 72% of high school students in America today want to be an entrepreneur.
Really?
7 Yeah.
Well, that's my oldest. She said, I want to start my own business.
Yeah, that doesn't shock me at all. So I think some of that comes from the fact that they look at established organizations and go, well, I don't want to join that. I'd
Yeah.
rather start something than join something. But they also have this drive inside. They have peers on TikTok that they go, man, he's monetizing
Mm.
TikTok right now. And
Yeah.
how does he do that? So I think we need to give them that sense of entrepreneurial ship, if you will, even if they join our organizations. How could it feel like a startup, even though it's an
Mm.
established organization? That would be one. They come in with high levels of compassion,
Yeah.
higher than the previous three generations at their age. And I think that comes from they're exposed to so much tragedy on that smartphone.
Yeah.
They feel that empathy, like they know what's going on in the Ukraine. They know what's going on the Gaza Strip or whatever. So we need to capitalize on that. That compassion is a good thing. Last time I looked at my New Testament,
Hmm.
so we need to capitalize on that. What else might be interesting for people to know? Um, well, um, they have a keener interest in influence and leadership than the previous two generations at their age. So again, my explanation for that is they look around the world, they see a truckload of problems, and they go, somebody needs to solve that problem. So what we teach Gen Z day in and day out, this might be helpful little handle for listeners right now. We say, if you're shy about becoming a leader, let me tell you what we think a leader is. They solve problems and they serve people. They
Mm.
solve problems and they serve people. If we can graduate kids that do that, we're going to change the world.
Yeah.
In fact, first we need to do that ourselves. Every
Yeah. No
problem that needs to
kidding.
be solved, what can I do, Lord? And every person needs to be served, what can I do, Lord? So I'll stop right
Yeah.
there.
Oh, that's great. No, I love that, Tim. Yeah, because when I hear that, I think, wow, the ingredients are already there.
Yeah.
There's
Yes.
some great tools, and some of these tools that we even scoff at sometimes, or think that they're holding them back. No,
Yeah.
maybe we just need to redirect them a little bit,
Yes.
and take what they're learning through those, and empower them for good. So I
It's
love
so
that.
true. Yeah. Yeah. I think you're spot on when you say that, for sure.
So when you're dealing with this generation too, I want to go back to story time because I just
Okay.
love your stories. So is there an illustration or even a metaphor or a story that you've shared with some of those young leaders from Gen Z that has changed the way that they view influence, leadership, service, all of that?
Yeah. Well, one story I enjoy telling is since I live in Atlanta, I've gotten close to the executives at Chick-fil-A. And Chick-fil-A as a restaurant chain is very much about, they call it second mile service. So it's even a biblical allusion to walking the second mile, not just the first
Wow.
mile. But what I love most is I see the top level leaders there embodying that.
Mm.
It's not just, okay, we teach this principle. You all now that are mid-level managers, you do that. So Dan Cathy is the chairman of Chick-fil-A. His dad, Truett Cathy, founded Chick-fil-A way back decades ago. But I heard from a VP who said Dan and I were traveling together on a trip. In fact, I think they were visiting a restaurant somewhere in the U.S. and they roomed together just to save a little money. And David, my friend, pulled out his clothes from his suitcase and has said, "Doggone it, my clothes keep getting wrinkled in my suitcase. I wish somebody would invent clothes that didn't wrinkle, you know." And we've all thought that before, haven't we not? And then David said, we went to bed. David said, when I woke up the next morning, I noticed Dan had gotten up at 5 o'clock in the morning and he had ironed all my shirts and pants.
Wow.
He's the chairman of the board
Yeah.
at this multi-billion-dollar organization. So what I love is he wasn't too big for that. He
Mm.
wasn't too important for that. He didn't leave his roots. He did that for his dad, I'm sure, back in the day when he was a teenager working for a Chick-fil-A restaurant. So I think maybe the lesson for me is, once again, isn't that over the top? That's the Waldorf principle. As the chairman, it was not in his job description to iron shirts. That
Mm.
was not on the piece of paper. But also, you never grow out of being willing to pick up the paper in the parking lot or love our daughter who just needs a listening ear, even though we could teach a lecture, to our daughter, that sort of thing. I'm learning that now. I have two adult children, Scott, both in their 30s. And I have relearned the lesson that my daughter at 37 years old doesn't need one more habitude. She's learned them all. What she needs now, and I just learned this last Christmas, is I need to call her up every month and just spend an hour listening to her.
Mm.
What I want to do is give her a talk, because she needs a couple of nuggets,
Yeah.
but she doesn't really.
Mm.
She needs me to listen. And I've noticed if I commit to an hour of listening, usually about halfway through, she's asking me questions.
Yeah.
But it's earned through a bridge I built, not a badge I wear. And so I just think that's the lesson from Dan that we all need to relearn over and over and over.
Boy, what a great lesson. It's such a good lesson that I've actually got it on a t-shirt because my financial advisor actually started this saying, and the saying is everybody makes coffee. And
Oh, I love it.
so when he gets in the office, he makes coffee. He's not expecting some intern or someone in a lesser position to do that. But I mean, they even put the coffee mug with his mustache on it because he's
Oh, I
got a
love it.
nice little
I love
mustache.
it.
Yeah.
Can I volley
So,
back on that real quick?
yeah.
One of our images is called the coffee step, and this is in Habitudes for New Professionals. We want to teach young professionals this whole truth. It's a story from one of our interns back in the day. Her name was Carrie, and Carrie was part of a group of 7 interns, and she was asked to make the coffee for the executive team meeting. And she told me later, she said, I was wondering, are you asking me to do this because I'm a girl and the guys won't do it? Let's face it, that might be the
Mhm.
case. She also said, I was wondering, do you not realize I have a degree from Kansas State University? And I have a degree now, blah, 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 blah. All the things we normally think. But she said, I'm so glad I just swallowed my pride and I got the coffee. Because when I started getting the coffee and serving it up to that executive team, I started getting acquainted with that executive team. They started getting acquainted with me. Next thing I know, they asked me to sit down at the table. Next thing you know, they asked me to join the meeting and answer a couple of questions from a
Mm,
20 something. Next thing I'm serving the coffee opened the door.
yeah.
So I think, don't you believe this? You just do the thing.
Yeah.
Just faithfully execute what you know to do. Be faithful with the little things, and he'll put you over many things.
That's
I
right.
think that's what Carrie learned. And she now is a PhD at Kansas State, where she once went to school. But she said, I learned the coffee step, and I keep doing it every day now. So I love it.
That's great. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Well,
Yeah.
let's go back to the playing field. We've got a lot of
Okay.
sports fans that are listening here, and I
Yep.
know you've talked to a lot of coaches and players. All of them are in high stakes environments, pressure situations. What's
Yeah.
a principle that you've seen that helps those leaders stay grounded and to serve even when they're under the pressure of the game?
Oh my gosh. Great, great question. Um, well, one that comes to mind, I don't know if this is the best one, but it's the first one that came to mind. One of our images that has served me well is called toll booths or roadblocks.
Mm,
Toll booths or roadblocks. Here's the truth. If you think about those 2 items, toll booths and roadblocks, both represent a time where we have to stop, right? You have to stop at both. When I get to the roadblock, I stop and I really don't have any options. It's that orange and white stripe fence that I've stopped my car and I can't do anything but go backwards. When I come up to a toll booth, it's a little different. I still stop my car, but I pay a price and I keep moving forward. I think every one of us have a choice when we get stuck or we're overwhelmed or we don't want to do the little thing. What are we going to do to pay the price and keep moving forward? It's an emotional choice. Do I get stuck emotionally? Hey, here's a good one. Injuries. Toll
yeah.
booth or roadblock. Toll booth or roadblock. And sometimes that choice is made for us. We cannot come back. I think
Mm.
of Dave Dravecki. Remember Dave Dravecki
Oh,
back in the
yeah.
day? He wrote Come Back and then When You Can't Come Back. But man,
Yeah.
that guy keeps serving.
Yeah.
So anyway, I don't know again if that's the best one, but whenever I just feel I just want to hunker down and just do my part, I need to think, what price do I need to pay to keep moving forward here? Yeah.
Yeah. That's really good. All right. Going back to your work with young people who are all looking to step into leadership roles,
Yeah.
what's a practical way that we can help them shift from that me first to a we first mindset?
Yeah. So it sounds so derogatory when we say they're in a me first mindset. It doesn't mean they're wicked or evil. I so believe in Generation Z. I really do. In fact, I think they may be the generation that actually finishes the job, so we can all
Mm,
go home to heaven.
yeah.
But they've been brought up differently than the millennials, and here's how. The millennials seem to do everything in teams. They played soccer in teams. They did school projects in teams. Everything was in teams. Gen Z, if you remember, especially in 2020, they were forced to learn alone.
Mm,
In fact, they were alone very often in their bedroom with that laptop. So they have been forced to be way more individualistic. It's very much a me first generation. You can't go to social media without getting a me first message. Sorry about sounding like grandpa right now, but it really is. So I believe we need to have conversations when Gen Z about the tug in every one of our heart. And here is that tug. I think there's a pull on our hearts to 2 things. On the one hand, I want to be me. On the other hand, I want to belong. I want to be me and I want to belong. Isn't that true? Every adolescent,
Yeah.
think about your own kid. Every adolescent, I want to be me, I want to belong. Now, in adolescence, we have a huge push to I want to be me. I want to get a nose ring. I want to have purple hair. I want to do this. I want to do that. And it's almost all exteriors to call ourselves unique. You and I learn when we get older. No, it's not exteriors that makes you. It's on the inside that you got to change. But I think every young person needs to learn. Of course, you want to be yourself, but you got to leverage yourself on behalf of something much, much bigger. And that's the conversation we got to have. Didn't we learn that? You played on teams, Scott, where it
Yeah.
wasn't just what you did on the mound. It was what the other eight players did that helped you on the mound. And I know this is cliche, but I'm telling you, even with my own kids, we had this conversation around the dinner table. I want to be me. I want to belong. I want to be. So Gen Z right now stands, the surveys say, as the loneliest generation on record.
Mm.
All generations on earth right now register a little lonely. We are just connected through a phone, but disconnected
Yeah.
personally. I think they're going to push for that. I want to be me when we need to say, you don't know what you're missing if you don't have a community that both supports and holds you accountable. So that would be step one, is we've got to have the conversation of, can you somehow strike a balance between I want to be me and I want to belong? Now, can I add one more nugget
Please.
before we fire back? I think there's a difference that we need to know between fitting in and belonging.
Ah.
Fitting in is, we ask a Gen Zer, well, you need to push a round peg in a square hole, just fit in. We need you to be this, not what you are. And they hate that. They fear that. They fear they're going to get a job one day that they absolutely hate, but they have the golden handcuffs on that force them to stay there because they need the money. Belonging is quite the opposite. Belonging is, be fully who you are, but be who you are on behalf of a larger whole. And you and I would say a team, a kingdom of God. So I don't know if this rings overly simplistic, but I remember those conversations. And I'll be honest with you, my son got it quicker than my daughter. She has this little rebel in her, that just rears back. And it's okay. I mean, Jesus uses rebels. Look at Simon Peter. But Peter had to learn some lessons along the way of, it's not about me. It's not about me. It's not about me. So the me to we is a huge step that we may have to help them consciously take. One last thought. So
Yeah.
what we did with our kids is we took them out to places where they had to. We served the homeless once a quarter, downtown Atlanta, and it smelled bad and people looked bad. And I'm sure they thought we looked bad too, but it was just good to debrief, that thing. Pam and I, my wife and I, would hold parties at our house for our adult friends, and we'd make our young children host those parties because they thought they knew everything, but they learned to answer the door. Hi, Mrs. Smith, come on in. Have you met Mr. Johnson? Can I take your coat? Would you like some iced tea? And I mean, they're like 12 years old at the time. And it was so good for them to know that service wasn't just a sermon they heard about.
Yeah.
It was something they did. And it's work to serve. But I'm telling you, we wanted to make sure that when they graduated high school, they had learned those lessons and it wasn't a theory. And thankfully, they're both gainfully employed right now and
Well,
doing it. So
and
anyway,
I'm sure they're implementing those same lessons. And again, going back to the name of this podcast, that's what it's about. It's about action. It's not just about an
that's right.
idea or knowledge of this,
Yes.
but actually putting it into practice.
Yeah, no
That's
doubt
good.
about it. And it's just taking a step in it. We don't need any more skills. We don't need any more talent. It's just get up off your butt and do it. Take a step. Yeah. So
Tim, I love the wisdom here. I love the illustrations that you've used. One more question, and I'll invite you to share some experiences or a story too, as you do so eloquently. But personal reflection. What's a moment where you realized that your true influence wasn't about a position or a title, but it was about serving others? And how has that shaped the leader that you've become today?
oh wow. Well, I'm going to brag on John Maxwell. He has served me so much. Much like I say, Jesus served me more than I serve him. John, I worked for John Maxwell for 20 years, right out of college for 20 years, and then started growing leaders. I remember one trip he and I took to India. We were doing a leadership conference, and I was the junior, he was the senior, but we were both doing leadership there. My wife had written John a note before we left, reminding John that I was a type 1 diabetic and that I needed to take insulin and I need to keep my blood sugars up and maybe have a little candy, nearby, just stuff that it was just John and I, and John was this celebrity, so she just wanted somebody to make sure I didn't die in, Mumbai, India. So we're at this particular event one night, and John's speaking, and when he gets done, people give him a standing ovation. They swarm the stage. Especially in third world countries, you're just, if you're American and you open your mouth, this is awesome. But I watched John. He signed a few books, but he pushed past the crowd to where I was. And he said, how are your blood sugars? Do you need something? And I thought, here's a guy that could just soak up what was happening to him.
Yeah.
And we've all had our own moments where that's the case. But I just felt like, gosh, I felt loved. And I would go to the mat for him because of those moments. And he's still that way. We kind of have an uncle-nephew relationship, even though I'm old now myself. But I just love that it wasn't his position. If it was his position, he was the celebrity with a capital C. But no, it was a relationship we had. And he was making sure I had whatever I needed. He was picking up trash on the parking lot or whatever. And I just love that he never lost that along the way.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that, Tim. I think that's a wonderful way to end, unless you have one more thought that you'd like to share.
I have zero more thoughts, Scott. Zero.
Well, you have certainly given us a lot to chew on. Thank you for just your wisdom, for your experiences that you're willing to share, and for the work that you're doing with the next generation. It makes me want to send my daughters off to you for a summer camp. So I don't know if you offer that, but I'm in.
Okay, that's awesome. I'm sure they're great. I look forward to meeting them someday. That would be a lot of fun for me, since I love the generation they're part of. And thank you for letting people know about the book. I'm very excited. This is kind of a guidebook for anybody that's older that doesn't quite get the next generation. So
yeah, absolutely. And again, give us the name of that book.
Yeah, it's called The Future Begins with Z, and the subtitle, 9 Strategies to Lead Generation Z as They Disrupt the Workplace. So I'm pretty excited about letting that disruption happen and helping them stand on our shoulders and take the world from us and run with it.
Fantastic. Well, I look forward to reading that book, and it's really good to spend this time with you, Tim. Thanks for getting on the game.
My pleasure. Great to be with you, Scott.